Good morning everyone, welcome back to another weekly outlook. So we're going to start with our top-down analysis from the monthly as we always do. So let's just kick off right here. So what do we see now on the monthly chart? So let's just briefly discuss the previous price action. We have our bullish dealing range from this low to this high. We've come into a bearish PDA, right? Bearish resistance at this imbalance and order block here on the monthly. Price closed out with this nice high wick, rejecting this area, taking buy side liquidity from previous highs. And then we had this doji candle, which shows a loss of momentum, right? So February, we didn't really move much. And now just over 1 week into March, you can see from the high to the low, we've already moved over 300 pips. Because of what's going on in the Iran war, of course, but either way, you can see that March has a lot of bearish momentum, right? We've already moved the entirety of about 3 candles here. So what I've been saying for a while now, the possibility of foreseeing a pullback to a possible discount here of this leg, right? So in this monthly leg, we have this discount with an open fair value gap and an open BPR overlapping each other right at the start of the discount. So from a monthly perspective, this is a good area for us to pull back to. Now this line here is a quarterly fair value gap, so let's go up to that. So just to briefly show you this, of course, for July's low, we can see here we have a nice big open fair value gap, open imbalance with order block, which on the monthly happens to be where that discount is, also overlapping those monthly PDAs. Okay, so that is a nice zone for price to pull back to, but I've also outlined this. I don't expect price to stop at this line, right? But that is a draw on liquidity. That is our first major high time frame draw on liquidity, because that's where the fair value gap starts. I do expect us to come deeper into that fair value gap, and I use the monthly more than the quarterly, of course, so we may actually come down into this zone, but it's a nice area to keep an eye on. I don't expect price to just stab into it and continue going higher or anything, but the possibility is there, and we may see some reaction from this monthly zone here. Obviously it will be a major sell side liquidity zone as well. So just back down to the monthly briefly, we can see, right, what I've written: monthly bearish momentum, bearish PDAs clearly rejecting at this time, and draws on liquidity present within the discount of this dealing range. So that's all clear. I do foresee possibly the future for us to come down into these zones and then of course continue higher, right? But that's way into the future. Okay, so we'll have our eyes, once we're down into these areas here and looks like we're rejecting, then we'll have our eyes on this high and this high here and possibly this high in the future, right? So let's move on to the weekly. Let's see what the weekly looks like for us. So in terms of the weekly, I think everything's now starting to align bearish with that monthly bearish pullback. As I said in my previous videos, this low here would have to go for the weekly to now look bearish. So after all of this bullish price action and formation, right, we've broken this bullish imbalance that we had here, and we've broken that dealing range low. So the dealing range from this low to this high here. So due to breaking that, we now look like we've switched market structure. Okay, we also have below a weak formation of lows here, right? We didn't sweep, say, this low before going higher. Price just left this trend line looking low. So it's a great place for price to target. We're just above it at the moment. So let's read into this current state of affairs. We have the weekly time frames now aligning bearish by taking out the previous dealing range low, which is here, creating that shifting structure and a new dealing range. So now we have this dealing range low and this dealing range high, right? We have that bearish dealing range. We have further weak lows to target as draws on liquidity, right, which is what I'm talking about here. Though we also now have PDAs above to use as resistance, which we may pull back to now we have taken this low. So we've obviously taken these January lows, which could cause some sort of pullback. However, as I said here, we cannot assume we will pull back for now, because this would be maybe like a 100 pip pullback here up into this weekly BPR, which is, as you can see, these overlapping imbalances here, which then also overlaps with this old fair value gap, which may turn into resistance for us due to the momentum, right? We've had serious bearish momentum due to what's going on in the world, of course. So the daily and lower time frames will dictate exactly how far back we go. So I'm not sure if we'll see price revisit these areas. We may go on to take out at least this week lows here first, right? So I think the weekly is fairly clear now, right? We've had this shift in structure. We do have these possible resistances in the future, but we've got week lows to target, this quarterly fair value gap to target, right, in the more immediate future. So let's go down to the daily, right? The weekly now aligns with that monthly pullback scenario, and we'll see how the daily is aligning with the weekly. So what's there to see here on the daily, right? We've created a bearish leg, of course, because we've created one on the weekly. So we have a bearish dealing range, right? So let's assume it's from around here to down to this low now. So I'm going to just look mainly at the recent price action. We can see a clear bearish leg. We've left behind the most closest bearish fair value gap. We also have one up here, but for now, concentrating on this zone because we may not see that deep pullback, right? So we can look into that if price continues higher into this range, right? Both of these are pretty good. This one's of course more in the premium, but as I've said, we've got loads of momentum. Price may use the lowest one here. Also, if we look to the left, it's overlapping with an old fair value gap here, right? An old bullish fair value gap, which we could even refine smaller into a BPR now, right? Which literally overlaps with our daily fair value gap, right? So it's a good point of resistance, which is why price may continue to reverse from here. Obviously the lower time frames will show us that. We've taken yesterday the previous weekly low sell side liquidity, and price closed out as this long wick doji, right? Bullish as well, bullish candle. So I do see today as bullish, but only up into this zone here. Right, so we've had a clear bullish indication. We've had price, failing to really close below these lows here. It's just been taking sell side liquidity and closing as these low test candles. Then yesterday we took that previous sell side liquidity, right, really early overnight, and then eventually closed out the day as this bullish candle formation. Right, so we have an obvious target above for price to be attracted to. So that's what I see on the daily. The daily is bearish, of course, right, in its structure overall, which aligns with the weekly. However, at the moment, there's no alignment for a bearish trade coming from the daily and the weekly, right, until we come into this zone at least, and then that's when everything will be more aligned to look for shorts. So in order for price, as I said, with that weekly, those weekly barriers, that weekly pullback, we would need to come up into this zone here. So we will see how price handles this, and if we get that deeper weekly retracement up into this zone here. Okay, so yes, daily bullish today, at least for the first half of the day, however long it takes for us to get into this zone here. Then I would expect a Tuesday, Wednesday high of the week here to align bearish, to then continue to target these lows and our low resistance target lows around here as well. Right, so that's a usual weekly profile. Tuesday or Wednesday high or low of the week. So I'm expecting that to possibly happen within this zone here. If not, maybe price will pull back deeper into this zone here. So we'll see how that alignment happens, but this is a good resistance zone, right, with these overlapping PDAs. So with that in mind, let's go down to the 4 hour. Let's see how that looks for us today. So this 4 hour price action, you can see, of course, was very bearish. Now, last week, we did leave a lot of this low resistance buy side liquidities. You can see these highs are just built up with each other. No obvious clear sweep of highs before price had that momentum downwards. This was overnight gapping, I believe, for Sunday into Monday. But either way, we left this nice low resistance buy side liquidity. So when price opened up, taking those previous weekly lows, okay, price has just moved up. It's now come above these highs, these sort of equal highs here. And today you can see we've come into a bullish PDA that we've left behind. We are quite close to that target here. So I don't expect price to pull down to this deeper PDA here, this deeper bullish fair value gap slash BPR here. Price looks to be rejecting this zone quite nicely already this morning. And as I said, we have that nice low resistance trend line liquidity up into this daily fair value gap here, right? So that's a clear attraction for price. Okay, the 4 hour is showing, right, some market shift here because it has come above this previous high as well. So a pullback into this area looks likely, aligning with that daily bullish outlook, of course. Right, and now the lower time frame is also giving some bullish order flow if we respect this zone here, indicating we are to come higher and take this buy side liquidity. So let's go down to the 1 hour where things may look a bit more clearer. So here's the 1 hour, a lot more drawings to take in, right? But I'm just going to browse over the more obvious ones, right? So when I've been explaining during my videos, right, these market maker models, right, we have a market maker sell model here, right, as you can see. So we completed that sort of triangle. We created our buy side curve up here, topped out and created our sell side curve here, eventually finding our way down to that previous weekly low. Right, you can see was taking out structural lows here and then eventually took out that market maker sell model target at the low here, right, which started that pullback. So now that we've taken out that low, what you can see I've drawn in now is the potential for this market maker buy model all the way up until this daily imbalance here. So you can see we've got this sell side curve here, this buy side curve here, and that completes the triangle up into this zone that started this move. So we've got all of these lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, right? Left behind a nice low resistance buy side liquidity trend line here. And then at these lows here where price has reversed, you can see now we're respecting bullish PDAs, right? Bullish order block here. We've had this BPR, which price struggled to break, right? We've got overlapping up and down imbalances. You can see it was resistance here. Price broke through it, used it as support, and then price continued going bullish. So we've got this 1 hour BPR also above here, which was resistance and support. Price broke above it, and it may be used as future support, but I don't think we will need to with this one here, because we do have this overlapping 4 hour, 1 hour fair value gap, which price looks to be respecting. The only danger here, which will be a bit more obvious on the M15, is that these are Asia lows, but price does seem to be respecting this here and be on its way to its target. The one thing I am cautious of is I've drawn in this SMC here. I think I've drawn it in early. I'm not sure if price has actually completed that yet, but on DXY here, you can see, yes, we've already taken out this high, which means we're very close to taking out the market maker buy model high here on DXY, which is the low as well. So that's the only thing that I'm very cautious of. DXY hitting this target before EU, and EU just reversing early. But otherwise, I do think this is a strong, clear, obvious zone for price to be attracted to. Right, it's got sort of daily time frame weight behind it. So I hope that's clear. We've got bullish order flow now after all of this bearish order flow, and we're ticking off this low resistance buy side liquidity targets as we're completing this buy side curve of the market maker model that you can see here, right? I've put this line in the middle to show the low. Then you can see this buy side curve, and you can see this sell side curve that creates the model. Okay, so we're coming from this clear support here, this 4 hour / 1 hour imbalance zone here that price has been bullish from. So we still have buy side liquidity targets above, but our weakness at the moment is this divergence that we're seeing. But let's check the M15 to see if there's any possibilities of catching a trade here today to take these highs out. Right, so here on the M15, you'll see a fractal market maker buy model, right? We've got this bullish dealing range on the M15. You can see we created another sell side curve here, right? Found a low, bottomed out, and now we're creating more of a buy side curve here as well to come and complete the target at this buy side liquidity here, which is within the larger 1 hour model, which comes up to this point here. Just to make it more obvious, we have this sell side curve here, and then we have this buy side curve here to complete that sort of triangle formation. We have had some order flow here. It would have been nicer to take out these Asia lows, right? As we know, price usually takes out one side of Asia and continues on to the other side. We've just taken the Asia range high, so that may cause a pullback into one of our PDAs here. So what would be nice is a pullback into this bullish imbalance here for price to then, on the entry time frames, of course, give us some sort of formation for us to trade up into these highs. Now again, this is a weakness of the trade here. I do see this as being a really good zone for price to pull back to. So we'll see if we get this sort of formation going on here. All right, we've respected order flow. We're showing order flow because we've respected this bullish PDA coming from this 1 hour, 4 hour imbalance here. All right, so we've made already one market shift on the M15. All right, we've come above these highs. It would be really nice if price pulls back down into this area here to look for possible longs to come back into this zone, as I've said. All right, so that's my outlook for today. That's what I'm looking for. So we're just on the daily to wrap this up. All right, the monthly looks pretty good for the pullback scenario. The weekly has now shifted structure for it to also now be aligned for a bearish move. The daily, as I said, at the current moment, right, looks good for a pullback. This is our first target here. Right, so it is also aligned bearish in terms of its market structure. But for today, right, I have a bullish outlook into this zone. Then I'll reevaluate it. From this zone here, I won't be looking for longs until maybe we violate that zone and use it maybe as support. But either way, bullish for today. The lower time frames have all aligned for bullish order flow, right, on the 4 hour, 1 hour, M15 to target this zone here. And then we'll see what happens. So I hope that's clear. Any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys soon.